And now let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts. They acquired the new starting quarterback and my old starting quarterback, uh, Philip Rivers. Philip Rivers was, I mean, I have his jersey. I wear it whenever I'm watching a Chargers game. This year, I'm gonna have to buy a Keenan Allen jersey. Those Charger jerseys looking fire. Let's stay on a topic with the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts acquired Philip Rivers with a 1-year deal for $25 million, which is great for a quarterback his age. And I mean, with his kids, he needs all the money he can get. But Philip Rivers is like a phenomenal talent. He's one of those guys. I compare him to Dan Marino because he's so talented yet never has a ring. He's surrounded by talent, and he continues to make do with what he has, even through injury, through different things that's going on. I mean, he's one of the most consistent quarterbacks, and he's one of the most slept on quarterbacks in fantasy. I mean, he's finished right outside the top 10 for about 10 years. So I mean, here's some of his finish in the last 10 years alone, from 2009 to 2019. 8, 5, 9, 21, 6, 12, 12, 14, 8, 11, 18. And not to mention, he's thrown for over 4,000 yards just about every season except for 2012, where he's only 400 yards off. But the main problem when it comes to Philip Rivers is interceptions. Um, Philip Rivers, I don't know, maybe it just he has these years where he'll throw for more than 18, 20 interceptions in a year, and it's baffling, you know. And so he's not much of a mobile quarterback. He's not much of a dual threat, but he's that guy that can guarantee you probably 2 or 3 touchdowns a game sometimes. I mean, he finishes the year 23. He finished 23 touchdowns last year with the weapons around him. I can only imagine what he could do with some people like T.Y. Hilton, Michael Pittman, and then 2 great receiving dual threat running backs with Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack. And if you actually check out our Instagram at the Flash Fantasy, you will see our Future Friday. We actually featured Jonathan Taylor this week. So go read up on that. And but yeah, I think he's surrounded by talent, and not only that, he has 2 healthy young uh, tight ends, and he has a team that around him that can do well if staying healthy. And Philip Rivers is a consistent. He's always healthy. He's played every game for the last 10 years, nonstop. So I think Indianapolis has secured themselves a very good starting quarterback. What about you on Philip Rivers, Norris?
Yeah, I respect Philip Rivers. I mean, he throws for tons of yards every year. Like you said, his biggest issue is interceptions. And, you know, you mentioned him and compared him to Dan Marino. Philip Rivers is going to have to actually make it to the Super Bowl first before we can put his name on there, because Philip Rivers has had ample amount of talent throughout his career to reach the playoffs. He's had guys like Sean Merriman. He's had guys like LT. He's had, you know, a plethora amount of talent. He's had 6 postseason appearances with 5 playoff wins. So I would probably take, I guess. I guess I wouldn't compare him to Dan Marino, but yeah, that's an interesting comparison. But I do think for the Colts situation, honestly, I think they would probably be better off with Jacoby Brissett. That's just my take on it. I respect Philip Rivers, but Philip Rivers is 38. I don't I don't think the Colts are in a situation where they needed to get someone like Philip Rivers, you know, for this year and to win right now. It's already a young team. The offensive line is young. The defense is young. You obviously have young receivers out there now. I mean, outside of T.Y. Hilton, but you have Michael Pittman now. You have Zach Pascal. Paris Campbell is over there right now. So these young guys that are up and coming, it's good from a leadership perspective, but Jacoby Brissett is no pushover. You know, I think he's a solid quarterback that if you continue to give him the chance, you'll see the growth happen. But Phillip Rivers, he's an established quarterback in the league, yes. And from a fantasy perspective, if you want somebody for a backup or even as your number one, he might be worthy of starting every week because I think he was last year, honestly. But just from a like standpoint of the Colts and looking at their offensive situation and their team as a whole, I don't think this was a move that needed to be made. But again, I respect Phillip Rivers. I don't think the Colts needed to make that move.
I can understand that. They also drafted a rookie, Jacob Eason. I like Jacob Eason. He did really great in the combine and in his college career. He was one of the rookies I was kind of highlighting around. But I think Phillip Rivers could definitely fill that role for this year. And so Jacoby Brissett, I mean, if you look at who Jacoby Brissett has been behind with Andrew Luck, with Tom Brady, I mean, he has great teachers. And now to add Phillip Rivers to that carousel, I think Jacoby Brissett is like getting into that role where he can be an overall, like, all-around threat. And I don't know if after last year, Jacoby Brissett started for the Colts last year. And I guess like team management just wasn't secure with having him as a starting quarterback. Plus, if Phillip Rivers is on the free agency, I mean, if I was a GM, I'd probably see what I can do to get him.
Yeah, it's just interesting when you look because, like you said, Jacoby Brissett was there last year, stuck it out with the team, and they just happened to be in a division where it's just tough. I don't think that they were in a position where they could have made a playoff run last year. This year looks a little bit more bright, but I guess the only thing that I can give Phillip Rivers is that since 2006, he's started and played every game. That's definitely something worth, I guess, picking him up for. He's thrown for over 4,000 yards since 2009. So, that's phenomenal stuff. But, again, even with you mentioning Jacoby Brissett, sitting behind Andrew Luck, sitting behind Tom Brady and getting that training, it's like Jacoby Brissett is not a guy that needs to sit on your bench. I think he should be starting. And the Colts are, again, in a good situation. Now, if they've signed Phillip Rivers just so that, I guess they could boost their confidence in going into the season, I can see that. But that's not I feel like a wise move long term. If they want to win this year, sure. But it's going to be tough to do that with the Houston team that we're looking at and the Tennessee Titans. I don't know if the Colts are going to be able to stick with those guys.
Right. you hit it on the nail. I think the Colts have the best chance of maybe finishing second at most in the division. But I'm looking at Jacoby Brissett's stats. He finished 23rd in PPR, and he only threw for under 3,000 yards with 2,942 yards. And only 18 touchdowns, which is kind of interesting for 16 games or 15 games played, actually. So not exactly the numbers I was expecting to see. I was expecting a lot better. But his rushing attempts is another interesting number to look at. If Jacoby Brissett can secure a starting job and be a dual threat quarterback, he can definitely see some fantasy value. I know Frank Reich has said that they suggest that Jacoby Brissett will play some snaps behind Phillip Rivers. So being mobile, maybe doing some trick plays. They want to take advantage of his mobility, according to Indianapolis Star. So Jacoby Brissett, I agree. He's very talented. He's learned, and I just think from what we saw last year, it was just underwhelming. It just wasn't.
I do agree with that.
So, but yeah, and so I think that's a lock on their quarterback. Just so you fantasy managers know, if you're targeting Phillip Rivers, you can pretty much not draft a quarterback, and you can just wait. If somebody's drafting Phillip Rivers, there's other quarterbacks.
You must have Jason in your league.
Right. I mean, honestly, I'd probably draft Philip Rivers 16th round just because he's there. I mean, if I can wait, if I know I'm in a league full of Chargers haters, I'll take Philip Rivers. But yeah, I think and the thing is, Philip Rivers, like we said, is poised to have a great year. He has again surrounded by talent. He has a better offensive line than he's had in years, and
Right.
so I think this is a good chance to see if Philip Rivers can make that distinction between him and Dan Marino. Because if not now, probably never. But yeah, so let's move on to the running backs with the 1-2 punch. They said Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor. They drafted Jonathan Taylor in the second round. His collegiate career is phenomenal in Wisconsin. And little side note, you know who else came from Wisconsin? Melvin Gordon. So I think that's a pretty interesting comp. But I actually compared. If you go check on Instagram, you can see who I actually compared him to. But let's talk about Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack, I think, has still the job there, but now he's more downgraded than he was. He was more of a reliable RB2 last year, but due to injury, like there's a couple games that he didn't play, and that was really like the biggest like stake in his career. He finished 22nd in PPR, but he also finished over 1,000 yards rushing, 8 touchdowns, and I mean that's still pretty good. And not to mention he only had 247 attempts, not even 250, and that's usually the line that you want to shoot for is 250 and 1,000 yards. And so for him to do it with 247, that's exactly what you want from a running back. Um, but the hard part about Marlon Mack is they have Naeem Hines in the backfield last year, so his receiving role is 0 to none. And plus, with Jacoby Brissett, he's not really that dump off guy to the running back. He wants to make those big plays. He wants to try and make a name for himself, but he never threw that many interceptions either. So that was the greatest thing. The the challenge with these running backs with Philip Rivers manning the helm is that, like we said, interceptions are going to come. Uh, I'm going to project Philip Rivers to throw about 10 to 12 interceptions this year, if not more. Um,
Okay.
I think that's low for him, to be honest, but that's what I'm going to project just because of the team and who he has as I mean, looking at the Chargers, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, they're great. I love them. Keenan Allen is a speedster and he could run routes and chop people up all day, but Mike Williams doesn't have that same speed. Now Philip Rivers is surrounded by speedsters with Paris Campbell, T.Y. Hilton, and this Michael Pittman.
Yep.
They got speed for days. So I think they can go get those balls that he may be lobbing a little bit more and make those interceptions go down just a bit. Now, I'm not blaming Keenan Allen or Mike Williams for Philip Rivers' interceptions. They're still beasts. And tune into our top 10 wide receivers coming out on Monday, and you can listen to all the great things I have to say about Keenan Allen. Anyways, but with these running backs, that's where I could see the downfall is if Philip Rivers is going to throw a lot of interceptions, they're going to be behind in those games, and they're going to need to throw the ball even more at that point. So it's going to take away from their game. But on the off chance that he does throw less interceptions, you could see these guys take over that role and start to produce even more and more as they try and wind down the clock. But what do you think about the running backs in the Indianapolis this year?
Yeah, the running back situation is, if I was an Indianapolis Colts fan, I would be encouraged with the draft of Jonathan Taylor. Because when you look at Marlon Mack, one thing he didn't do last year was fumble the ball. He had 0 fumbles. And so that's great, But the thing about it is the game philosophy on offense, I'm still trying to figure out because I think that when you have a guy like Marlon Mack, so if you look through the numbers, it's 25. He had 2 games where he had 25 or more carries. The first game he did that was against your, beloved Chargers. It was 25 attempts with 174 yards and a touchdown. Okay. In week 5 against the Chiefs, he had 29 carries and 132 yards with no rushing touchdown. Those games are 2 of his 3 100-yard performance games throughout the entire year. So that's not something that I would say would encourage me about Marlon Mack. I need more out of Marlon Mack if he's going to be the number one guy. But Frank Reich and the offensive coordinator has already come out and said that the plan is to have the 1-2 punch with Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack. And like you mentioned, Nyheim Hines, he had 2 total touchdowns last year. That's not saying much, but it's just something to put your eye on, to know that there's going to be certain moments or different opportunities that are going to be given to these running backs, and you're not going to know which one is going to really go off, which is why a lot of people hesitate and don't really gravitate towards running backs in committees. But again, if I am a fan, if I were a fan, I would be very excited to watch Jonathan Taylor, really hit the ground running. I think that's what he's going to end up doing. I think that he will be looked at as the number one running back in the backfield. But he just has the help of Marlon Mack and whatnot. So we'll see how it all plays out. But when I think about Indianapolis, they're not a run first team. That's not something that I think about. They're pretty well balanced, honestly, when I look at the numbers. But I think with Phillip Rivers there now, they're going to have way more big chunk plays. The yards per play is going to increase, I believe, because like you said, he has many weapons right now. I really like Michael Pittman Jr., but we'll get to him later on. But yeah, the running back situation, again, I would, be cautious as to how high I draft, a guy like Marlon Mack or Jonathan Taylor. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the running back situation out there in the Colts.
So, when you say cautious, let's say end of the 5th round, you taking Marlon Mack?
In a redraft league?
Yeah, redraft PPR league, yep.
Yeah, I probably for long-term sake. I mean, honestly, Marlon Mack he's not old. He is 24 years old. It's only his 4th year, going into his 5th year, I believe, or going into his 4th, either one. But it's an interesting question. It's something I would have to think about. But to answer your question, I would draft Marlon Mack in that territory, but I would probably draft Jonathan Taylor before Marlon Mack.
Yeah, so that's actually where Jonathan Taylor ADP is, out in the 5th round. And then Marlon Mack's ADP is more of the 7th round.
Yeah, I figured as much because I definitely would – watching Jonathan Taylor and knowing just, watching him throughout college, I would feel more confident with drafting him versus going after someone like Marlon Mack who really has a low ceiling fantasy-wise.
Fantasy-wise, yeah. I think both of them are very skilled, and the challenging thing is we don't know. ADP is going to change between now and the regular season for sure. So, and we haven't heard anything from training camps or OTAs because of everything that's been going on. So, once we have some more information, I'm sure ADP will rise and fall depending on that.
Yeah, and shout out to Marlon Mack. USF, South Florida guy. Let's go. We love the Florida guys.
Love them Florida guys, but I think Marlon Mack. And the greatest thing, like you said, he's only 24. You said
24.
24. So let's say Jonathan Taylor takes this job. I think Marlon Mack can find himself set up on the team really easily. Yeah. Something I kind of envision is Marlon Mack making his way to the Chargers. I personally would like to see that, the 1-2 punch between him and Eckler. I like that. But that's just me. I like Marlon Mack that way. But yeah, I think that's all what you said about the running backs. Just being cautious of where you're going to draft them, because we don't know what Jonathan Taylor does in the NFL. It's a whole nother ball game. So, but yeah, let's move on to the next skill position where this whole team is. I mean, the depth of wide receiver on this team is fantastic. So you have T.Y. Hilton, Paris Campbell, Zach Pascal, and Michael Pittman Jr. that are all wide receivers. And now the official depth chart, what I can see now is at wide receiver one you have T.Y. Hilton, at wide receiver two, I'm sorry, at wide receiver two you have Paris Campbell, and at wide receiver three you have Michael Pittman. So getting drafted and filling that wide receiver role immediately is exactly what they wanted, and they're not about to waste any time. I like Michael Pittman. I think he's a great talent. He got drafted in I believe the second round, right? Yeah,
Second round.
second round of the 2020 draft, 34th overall. So the second pick of the second round. So I think he's from USC. So that's the same as Juju, same as a lot of different actually wide receivers and quarterbacks. A lot of people coming from USC are strong and ready to rock the NFL. So I think with Michael Pittman being the like X receiver coming in and filling that role, lining up on the outside and him and Ty on the outside is fantastic. But that's just a little rookie analysis. Let me give you the best receiver on the team with T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton, if he could stay healthy, he could finish top 10. But that's the thing. He's, I believe, 31. So he's 30. Yeah. So I think, sorry, Ty, I'm not trying to put any age on you, bro. I know it's tough out there, but yeah, man, I think he's still phenomenal. I'm targeting him late in drafts. I've seen people let him drop to far as like ninth, 10th rounds, and I'm like, yep, scoop. It's unbelievable. Some people like definitely sleep on Ty, but overall he's nobody to sleep on. In a lot of drafts, they're not really sleeping on him either. His ADP is somewhere between the fourth and fifth round. So I mean, overall, T.Y. Hilton I think can produce well and be that wide receiver one or two depending on the week. The tough thing about T.Y. Hilton, like I said, is injury, and he can be that kind of boom or bust player at times. But I think with Philip Rivers, I think the consistency will be there because in the last couple of years we've seen him have Andrew Luck and Andrew Luck being injured, and then Jacoby Brissett, and Jacoby Brissett really didn't have like the accuracy that we would see in most of the quarterbacks. So I think Philip Rivers and Ty can really hit it off and make that number one wide receiver role fit as a fantasy player.
Yeah, T.Y. Hilton, I agree. He is, the best and number one receiver out there right now. But my thing with his injuries last year, he played 10 games, and the year before that he played 14. So, yeah, he's definitely the number one. But my thing is for him to be a number one receiver. And again, we'll keep in the context that he was dealing with injuries. But the highest amount of targets that he had in a game was 11.
Hmm.
That's not encouraging if I'm, going to be a guy that's seeking after T.Y. Hilton. Honestly, I think with Michael Pittman Jr., they got 6'4", over 200 pounds. He is another Mike Williams, but we might see him be a better Mike Williams because he's more of a precise route runner. But we'll see how that all plays out. Again, he hasn't touched the NFL field yet. We'll see how he plays. But I think that we'll see T.Y. Hilton and Michael Pittman be the top options and the most targeted receivers out there. And if you are sleeping on T.Y. Hilton, I'll talk to you for a minute. I understand where you're coming from. I understand. He had 5 touchdowns. He's dealing with some injury stuff. He had 501 yards last year, guys. I understand out of 45 receptions. The year before that, he had 76 catches for over 1,200 yards with 6 touchdowns. That's cool. Like, that's solid receiving numbers. But honestly, again, if you're sleeping on him, I understand. And if you are wanting to take the bait on the younger receivers right now over T.Y. Hilton, if you have the opportunity to do that, by all means do that. But if you're looking for a flex, if you're looking for like that, every now and again wide receiver 2. I don't see T.Y. Hilton as a 1 right now. He would have to like work his way back up. But I can see him as the fringe number 2 flex type of piece on your roster. But yeah, I think that, and hey, Florida man alert, FIU. So with the Florida man tag, you never know what crazy thing he might end up doing. On or off the field. We just don't know. So I guess that's my little boost of encouragement to those who might be sleeping on T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, and I just want to circle back to Michael Pittman real quick. Like you said, he's 6'4", 223 pounds. He ran a 4.5 on the 40. Now that's not what we love to see. He's not so much like Tyreek or Henry Ruggs, but he's still got speed behind him. And the biggest thing is he has agility too. He ran a 6.96 on the cone drill, as well as a 4.14 on the shuttle drill. So the man's got agility. He's got strength. He's got a little like some speed behind him, and he's got size. So him going on the outside, getting those jump balls, and coming down with them is more likely when you have somebody like Phillip Rivers throwing it up for you. Now, a position I could really see elevated that we've seen do very well in Indianapolis before is the tight end position. Tight ends, they have Jack Doyle, which I hate to say the name Jack Doyle sometimes because the times that he's burnt me in the last 5 years, I've always had so much hope, especially after his sophomore year, and he had this big kind of like jump on 2017 where he made 7th. Now again, for those of you that don't know, the teardrop between tight ends is extreme. You're either top 3 or 4, and then you have like pretty much the rest of the bottom of the barrel, and just you want somebody who's going to be consistent. Now in 2017, Jack Doyle did have Andrew Luck throwing to him, and so it was more of a reliable connection between him and Andrew Luck. He had 108 targets, but let's look at last year with 72 targets, only 43 receptions, 448 yards, but 4 touchdowns. And that's where we could see the upside for both, not only Jack Doyle, but Trey Burton, who was just signed to the Indianapolis Colts. We could see them both have these red zone targets. They're not exactly these receiving backs like Hunter Henry, like Phillip Rivers has been used to, but they're these bigger guys that can go in the red zone or block for Phillip Rivers because we all know how much he needs blockers. But there are these bigger tight ends that can really fill that tight end position like a traditional tight end. And then you have the man, the mountain himself, Mo Alley-Cox, who is 6'5", and I mean, if you've ever seen this guy, he towers over people, and I think that's what Phillip Rivers could really use to his advantage as well, especially in those red zones. Now he only got 2 touchdowns 2018, so I think that was 2 years ago, by the way, guys. So I think we can see. I don't think we can really rely on Mo Alley-Cox to be a fantasy relevant tight end. I just like the man as the mountain himself. But definitely keep an eye on Jack Doyle and Trey Burton. Even though it pains me to say Jack Doyle's name, he could end up as a top 10 tight end. We've seen Hunter Henry produce in the top 10s. I mean, he missed 8 games last year and still finished within like 8th overall as a tight end. So, I mean, it's Phillip Rivers likes the tight end position, guys. So look for Jack Doyle or Trey Burton. You could probably snag them for free. They're probably right next to Phillip Rivers in ADP. They're that low, guys. So honestly, they're not really like the top tight ends. There's way more guys that you could be targeting, and there's even sleeper picks that I would pick over them. But they're definitely somebody to keep your eye out on, especially with Phillip Rivers in Indianapolis. But what do you think about the tight end position out here?
Yeah, Trey Burton is gonna play a similar role to how Eric Ebron, played. I think he is a good complement to Jack Doyle, but I'm staying away from the Colts tight ends. Again, they're waiver wire type of pickups. So I'm definitely not drafting any any Colts tight ends. If they are there, cool. If I need it, sure, let's do it. But yeah, and looking at the schedule for the Colts, they really don't have a tough schedule, guys. So you might end up seeing guys like Jack Doyle or Trey Burton or even Zach Pascal have these weird like big games because they're looking at the Jets, they're looking at the Browns, the Bengals, the Detroit Lions. The Lions are okay; they're getting better on defense. But really, their biggest challenge that I see on like defensively, the Vikings, maybe the Ravens for sure. The Packers' pass defense is, becoming more solid in creating turnovers and whatnot. But guys, they really don't. I mean, the Steelers late in the season of the next year. So I think they might have a pretty decent season, but the tight end situation is not something worth, I guess, highlighting from a fantasy perspective. Again, if you're in those types of deep leagues, we see Jack Doyle. He put up, decent amount of numbers, but he's not a week-to-week starter, and neither is Trey Burton. So maybe midway throughout the season, if you start to see some consistency, because as a result of having Phillip Rivers being the starter, which obviously, like Jason said, he loves his tight ends. So we might see an uptick in the production of Jack Doyle, but we'll see. The verdict is still out, obviously, and I just don't know. No, I do know that I'm not going to be the type of person or be the guy to draft just because Phillip Rivers has shown up. I tread lightly when it comes to the Colts because I gave Eric Ebron a chance. I gave Jack Doyle a chance, like 2 years straight. I'm okay.
Yeah, I feel that. I think I'm looking at a couple different posts of strength of schedules, and Indianapolis Colts are kind of a little bit above like mid-pack when it comes to easiest schedules. So overall, like, yeah, they could have a very productive year. But again, this is the time for Phillip Rivers to make or break, really prove if he's the next comparison of Dan Marino or not. And I hope he proves me right. Some people have the Indianapolis Colts projected to finish third seed in the AFC. Now, for me, that's a little too rich for me. I doubt it. I doubt that. I think number one, we could probably see the Chiefs again. Number two, probably the Ravens. Maybe a little bit of regression, but tune into our AFC North and AFC West divisional breakdowns. But I could see the Indianapolis Colts maybe securing that wild card spot. We talked about the NFC South being potentially like having that crazy year of having all four teams make the playoffs somehow. I could see that for the AFC South more than other divisions. Maybe not Jacksonville, but probably Indianapolis, Houston, and the Tennessee Titans is the three that I would probably bet to make some kind of splash getting into the playoffs. So we'll mention some key players. We mentioned Zach Pascal and Paris Campbell earlier. They're not really guys to target. Michael Pittman, I put him very low in the draft. He's not somebody I'm going after. He's a rookie. He's somebody like I'll take that back. I am going after him, but I'm going after him way late. Like we're talking 12th round, people. Like
Ooh,
you're gonna take him before the 12th round.
that's too late. That's too late. He's going to be gone. He's going to be gone. Trust me.
So 9th round.
Yeah, he'll probably be there. But I'm the guys like Michael Pittman. You could we see the 4.5 and whatnot. Hey, look, Jerry Rice. Even though we don't see he ran an official 40, but he's probably running around a 4.6 in a 40 if we look at the game tape and whatnot. So don't get too caught up, guys, on the 40 times. This is a huge target. He knows how to get the ball and find the ball. So I would put him in a bit higher than ninth and whatnot. I mean, for me, if you're in a redraft league and you have the luxury of kind of experimenting, and trying to find different pieces that because some picks, when you get into that, fourth and fifth and sixth round, you start to get people that you want and not necessarily people that you need. And Michael Pittman Jr. is one of those guys where I say buy. Like, take the risk if need be. Because, again, we're talking Phillip Rivers. He's going to look at Mike Williams and his rookie year. He had 10 touchdowns. I think you should definitely take the risk, which honestly is a low risk because, Michael Pittman is going to be at the number 2 spot. That's just how I see it. I think it's going to be T.Y. Hilton and it's going to be Michael Pittman. So, yeah, I think he's in a good position offensively.
Okay. So let's talk rookie wide receivers, right? Michael Pittman or Jerry Jeudy?
Jerry Jeudy.
Okay. Michael Pittman, Henry Ruggs.
I'm going Michael Pittman.
Okay. Michael Pittman or Chase Claypool?
Michael Pittman.
Michael Pittman or Jalen Reagor?
Jalen Reagor.
All right, last one. Michael Pittman or Justin Jefferson?
That's a good one. I'm going to go Justin Jefferson. He's also in a good position as well. He's going to be a name that you hear consistently throughout this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Justin Jefferson a lot this year. I think Justin Jefferson, Michael Pittman, and Chase Claypool kind of all fit that same role as that going into the immediate wide receiver 2 role. Chase Claypool is a monster. He has size, he has speed. Big Ben loves his outside wide receivers, and now that Juju can get back into the slot, we could probably see Chase Claypool produce in that role. So, yeah, that does it for our Indianapolis Colts breakdown. Thank you for tuning in. For the rest of the AFC South Breakdown, make sure you subscribe or follow our podcast so you can see when the next episode is coming straight to you. Or you can check out our YouTube channel. We'll be uploading videos every single day.